So I bring back the question the gentleman over there raised about alternatives to things like Facebook, because as I said at the beginning, I've stayed away from Facebook. It's not something I want to put my data on. And one of the reasons I came was because I thought we were going to talk about that. I just wondered if we could bring that one back up to the...
Diaspora works fine. Diaspora, what's it called? Diaspora works great.
I've been using the Rise Up crabgrass a little bit. It's still sort of in beta. I'm finding it a bit difficult to get into it.
Yeah, just to clarify that, Climate Camp used crabgrass. It was a disaster because the security models, the default security settings are appalling. Basically, you can't do anything. It's completely locked down. If they just reversed it and the whole thing was open and you could lock it down by choice, then it would be usable. But it's just this activist security. Everything must be totally secure. I mean, everything is totally unusable. Everything open, but you can make it secure, then actually it would be. So basically, it's a cultural thing. Yeah. And if we can overcome this cultural thing, you know, and you know, I think crabgrass is a good tool, but its default security model is completely unusable.
But isn't that what Facebook has been criticised for? The fact that they tend to default open and then they expect people to understand the security model to lock it down. So
as well as diaspora, okay, this is one called Friendica. It's an interesting thing. It's PHP based rather than a Rails based application.
How do you spell Friendica?
Friendica, F-R-I-E-N-D-I-K-A. Friendica.
If you want to make your own, it's Elg.
Elg, yes. Yeah.
I've got my own laptop. Just
to come back to you about your Elg platform, is that Elg won't federate with anybody else, but Friendica is a federated platform, same as Diaspora is, okay? So they make just to come back to that here. So I think the federation thing is really interesting, is that you can run your Friendica site and you can run your Diaspora site, and actually Diaspora and Friendica will interoperate with each other.
What about crabgrass?
Crabgrass is not federated platform.
Client server, peer-to-peer. visionontv wants to be a peer-to-peer network, but all the technology we're using is client server. We can't get any geeks to write any peer-to-peer stuff for us. We're desperate. So if anyone wants to help with VisionOnTV to make it more peer-to-peer, talk to me later.
I mean, I think a really important thing for us to be doing though is to start using some of the alternate platforms and start cross-posting across to these things. So you've got a lot of people in Facebook, you've got a lot of people in Twitter, okay? That's fine, it's too late, you're already there, okay? But there's no reason why you can't set up a Diaspora account and start cross-posting from there to Facebook, okay? There's no reason why you can't use a status net implementation, like an Identica account, and cross-post from there to Twitter. And you can cross-post from Identica to Twitter and to Facebook also. So one of the things that Sheffield Media was doing as an experiment, was they take an RSS feed from their content management system, their website basically, and they feed that into StatusNet, okay, and that gives them the ability then to push that into Twitter, which they can link to a Twitter account, and they can push that into Facebook also, to a Facebook page. Their content isn't, they don't manage or maintain the Twitter or the Facebook side of things because it's not really what they're interested in, but it's there for the people who are in those spaces to be able to access easily, but it's not dependent on, and they won't, but when you do things, publicise the fact that you've got an Identica account rather than a Twitter account. So the Sheffield Indie Media Twitter account will say, we're just here for the lulz, if you really want to find us, we're in Identica instead, yeah, or we're at Sheffield Indie Media.
What's Identica?
Identica, it's a micro... Identica is a micro-blogging platform, okay, that looks a little bit like Twitter, okay, except it's not Twitter, okay, and that is federated so that you can run your own Identica server.
You can run your own StatusNet server.
Yeah, StatusNet, the software is called StatusNet. And actually, rather more interesting, I mean, within, if you don't know, that's India, is that India? Yeah. Okay, so that's a StatusNet implementation. So there's a bunch of people talking about stuff in there, doing their things in there. But they can share that with other people who are not on that server. You can still communicate and share things with them. One of the interesting on a geeky level around the StatusNet stuff is that they've actually got a protocol, the OStatus protocol, which is a message passing protocol that allows you to pass rich content between sites and also kind of go back upstream and get profile information about people, and it's this kind of what you subscribe to you subscribe to a user, okay, and when they make a change, okay, they send a little notification that they've had a change, and then you go and pull that content back for them. So it's kind of a model that scales better than RSS. RSS is similar to RSS, but on a technical level, that's
I'm kind of interested in this sort of web notifications thing. How does that compare to like PubSub Hubbub?
PubSub Hubbub is part of the OSData suite of protocols.
It is, right?
Yes. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So that's the thing. Yeah.
And one of the nice things about StatusNet is talking about kind of usability. Really simple to post stuff, and also to federate the stuff, to send it to Twitter or to Facebook. It's tick a box. And actually, one thing that I feel kind of a lot of these open source tools have actually really come on quite a long way in the last few years, because I'm not a programmer, and 5 years ago when I started trying to use open source bits of software and technologies and platforms, I found it really hard, because when things didn't work, you probably had to go to the command line and do something that I didn't understand how to do, and it was all a bit much. Actually, the kind of user interface design and usability has come on quite a long way in the last few years, and that's not to say it's up there with the kind of corporate giants who are spending hundreds of thousands of pounds and dollars on making things really sticky and really intuitive for their users. They have huge amounts of money that get spent on doing that. Open source projects don't, but I do think that the gap is actually probably narrowing, and that the tools that are coming out are a hell of a lot more usable. And even just kind of thinking about indie media content management systems, when we used to front page something, you had to compose the entire feature with the HTML in there, which is all right as long as you can write HTML, which actually most people who wanted to come and volunteer and help us out couldn't do. And kind of say, well, look, we're really interested in content and writing, but this weird machine language, code, oh, it's not code, it's a markup language, all right, kind of thing. That really put them off, and it was a massive technical barrier for getting people involved. But actually, those barriers have started to come down with some of the functions and interface changes that people have been trying to implement, because of comments from people saying, we can't use this if we're not as geeky as you, and actually that's really not very useful if you're trying to make tools that are going to be taken up by movements.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me around StatusNet is there's a really nice mobile application for it. So there's a really nice, lots of people use mobile phones these days. So there's a client called Mustard, and there's an official StatusNet client that you can install on the iPhones and on the Android phones. And you install it, and you can take a photograph, you can press the share button, and it's there for other people to have. And you're doing that. That's not via a corporate network. It's kind of there, and you can push it into Twitter and all the rest of the space as well. Diaspora, that's looking really, like you mentioned Diaspora, and that's looking really sweet at the moment. It's kind of just really arrived there in the last month or so.
But in terms of security, I've heard people say, oh...
I've no idea, I don't think anyone knows, basically.
No, I think there was some real issues with the very first 00000 release of Diaspora, but they've probably fixed those by now.
And the idea of Diaspora is that you control, the data is stored locally, and then you control what is allowed people meant to access. What's the difference in the model?
It's very simple. I mean, you have a concept of aspects, different aspects of your life within Diaspora. Okay, so you've got, it comes by default with a world aspect, a friends aspect, and internet, a public aspect. Okay, but you can create other aspects, and you can add people into different aspects. Okay, so you can share with the world, which is anybody in Diaspora. You can share with a bunch of friends, or share with just family, that kind of thing. And only the people who are within those different aspects will get the notifications about the thing. So you might put your family photos, you might set up your own Diaspora instance, or you might, there's one, LondonDiaspora.org is one that you can connect to. I'm on that one, and that allows open subscription. There's the joindiaspora.org, which is, I think, is an invite one. So there's a number of different Diaspora instances. You can find one. There's even got a website somewhere which I can't remember the URL of, which gives you an idea of the uptime and the stability of the different Diaspora nodes. Okay, kind of go back to this thing about federated stuff. Where's a good place for me to live? If it's got good uptime, that might be good for you.
But if you want to control your data, then the idea would be that you would run your own instance and then federate that.
You can then connect to other people. You can connect and communicate with other people and other ones. And you can add people from different Diaspora networks into aspects in yours. They don't have to be all on your desk, for instance. Okay, if you're on your desk, for instance, I'm on my desk, for instance, I can add you to one of my aspects and share content with you.
Can I just go?
The idea of can we trust these people? What's secure? What isn't? I would argue that we have absolutely no idea what's secure, what isn't. And actually, I would love to have an idea, a real idea of what's secure, what isn't. So yeah, I don't know if there's a bunch of geeks in this room who want to go and set up a group. I'll have to get involved about looking at these websites and writing up some documents about where they're secure from the different points of view. So just then we can put them out in public and people can actually make an informed choice. Because is Diaspora secure? I have no idea. None of us know. It's a trust network. Do we trust the guys running it? A bunch of Californian hippies, or New York hippies? I have no idea. StatusNet, who are these people? I don't know. Can we trust them? I have no idea.
But why should anybody trust this security group before mine?
Well, it's formed in an open meeting and it'll organise on an open wiki, and you can see who's publishing.
These coders usually form on an open wiki and sort of.
We're just digesting
their
knowledge.
in a different room.
Which digest their knowledge and put it out. Whether people trust it or not is that's it.
So you're talking about effectively a penetration testing team.
Not that hard, but yes.
Let's say what social networking means. People assume, it's something like Facebook, but the aspects of it, for instance, talking about federated systems, you go the ultimate way, and there's this project called Profile. You can put, if you want your profile, you don't have to have a server anywhere. You just create a profile, which is your profile, and you host it anywhere, and it can link to other people's profiles, for instance. And I've done one, but hardly anyone uses that. And then another aspect of this that involves security is that a social network could be your PGP trust network, but again, very few people use that, and it is very difficult to use PGP. The usability, but I'm not sure that it can be made usable, because I think it does require a certain amount of education. That you really do need to go in and understand basic concepts about encryption and security before you can do it. I'm not sure whether it's possible to make a foolproof, easy, usable interface to PGP that allows people to create trust networks.
I'd just be interested in finding out who's used, PGP for emails and that secure internet.
I've never bothered because
very few people
nobody had communicated to use it.
Not true.
That's right.
Okay, I was just wondering.
Can I just, are we audio recording this meeting?
Yes, we are audio.
Fabulous. Just enjoy it then.
Can I just
respond?
Sorry.
So we go for
to your point about security is I think it's really dangerous to just rely on a technological solution, because you could have a really bomb-proof secure network, but if you send me something through this network and I'm a police informer, it doesn't matter how secure that is. So I think as activists, if you're doing something secret, you still have to kind of take responsibility for your own security and what you put out there and how you put it out and who you're talking to. And I don't think I think that's fundamentally a social issue. I think technology can help, but...
Yeah, there's a way of doing that I've used, where I've been in a meeting and a piece of paper has gone round saying, like, anyone wants to talk about this thing, meet outside somewhere in the street, in an hour, and you don't say anything because there could be bugs, and you go out and you find an open space, and you only then talk to people, that sort of thing. Yeah, so there are people.
Do people feel it's within scope to talk about, if you do get identified for some reason and you are of interest, the police want to come and take your boxes away, how you can organise yourself to sort of have a sort of fire break, as it were, in terms of machines? Is that out of scope?
What do you mean by fire break?
Well, in the sense of, you've got some cheaper machine on site that they can go and grab with some technology that will...
These are the machines you're looking for.
Well, for example, I know you can get Wi-Fi going across sort of a safe, for example. So you can bury the safe in the garden with the expensive machines, I don't know, and Wi-Fi to a cheaper machine the police will come and take away. I just don't know. I'm just saying it's in scope because it's.
We've thought about doing this a lot because we have hundreds and hundreds, probably thousands of tapes of direct action, and.
That would be a valuable resource.
A really valuable resource. We've never been raided. We've been doing this for 15 years. We've never been raided by the police once. But they could raid and take all these tapes. What the fuck do you do with them? We have this idea that we store them in a separate building, but do we actually do that? No, because we're using the tapes. Schnews got raided and all their tapes got taken. And they were probably used in prosecutions. Yeah, I don't know, but it's a real problem. Yeah, this digital data. How do you keep it secure?
Is it physical or just...
It's physical. It's tapes. Yes.
And that presents a different kind of problem because there are quite complex, again, security workarounds where you can have encrypted hard drives with hidden encrypted containers within them, which does make it quite difficult for police to find things, but that does start to gravitate into a slightly different discussion. In terms of non-corporate tools, again, blogging platforms is one. There's a site called Network 23, which some other people associated with Action Lab run, which is WordPress. Because when people think of WordPress, they think like WordPress is one thing and it's WordPress.com. There's WordPress, the content management system, which is what they use to power things, and then there's WordPress.com, which is a particular installation of WordPress, which is corporate run, has adverts on, and is run by people who've got no interest actually in keeping your data there. There are examples like there have been climate bloggers who've had kind of libel threats from skeptics. Blog goes down. There's been people in Bristol who've written kind of exposés, or people like the chairman of the University of the West of England. Again, kind of whole blog goes down. You've got no access to any of the material because it's being hosted by people who actually aren't concerned about keeping your data up. They're concerned about making money, and any legal threat is going to be more important than your stuff to them. So Network 23 is a WordPress installation that's run by some activists in the UK. So if you're writing a political blog, they will kind of do what they can to keep your stuff there. I mean, if what you were writing was really obvious incitement and they got a couple of takedown notices, they would talk to you about saying, actually, like, look, we kind of need to do something about this, but it wouldn't be the kind of go in and just remove everything and kick your access for a while approach that you see with the corporate providers. So that was a kind of concrete alternative that I wanted to flag up, because WordPress actually is a really usable platform. Is that a question?
It's a point on that. With any WordPress.com blog, you can easily export everything out of there and import it into a direct WordPress.org, i.e. the content management system itself. So you can self-host any content that you've got on WordPress.com. So I would recommend, like, as a general principle, take your content and put it on your own hosted blog, and it's really easy to host your own WordPress.
I'd say it's a good way to back up your stuff in case, if you're on WordPress.com, but there are the social networking aspects. WordPress.com has so many blogs and linking between blogs and all that sort of thing. That is the sort of social network in itself of who's linking to who in WordPress.com. There's you've got a single login then, so you can be putting stuff up on lots of different WordPress.com without having to have lots of different sign-ups, and there are advantages to it as well. But if you're worried about your blog disappearing, then you can export and keep just a safe backup of it. But if you do need to go to somewhere else, you can just start hosting it on your own server then.
Just going to say, the network23.org people, that's a multi-user blog network. So it's not, so it's that they're doing hosting, but it has the same features as the WordPress network. Though obviously you'd be moving to a different social network if you moved there. Yeah.
So visionontv has blogs too, but we have an open security model. So we do log IP addresses, just because it's a really useful thing to do. And just technically within the CMS it adds a lot more functionality than if you take it out. And we will support you if you get a takedown notice, as long as you haven't been stupid. And we'll actually make films about it and publicise them.
Can I ask you about the law regarding retention data? Because I mean, in the UK, isn't it? I didn't think you wipe all the IP addresses.
It's
that's
not
great.
you wipe them, you don't record them in the first place.
Right. Okay.
So they never, because even if it's written to a disk in a RAID, you could go back and try and find them. They're never recorded at all.
Okay.
So it's not data retention, the data is never...
Okay, so is that a circumvention of laws which, if you did it, record them in some way, there would be UK laws that would demand that you kept those records on a nice shelf, so when a policeman comes in 6 months, he can just...
Well, it comes down from the EU. It's, well, when you say UK, it's UK law, but yeah.
It's EU law, and what is it?
6 months, which it'll probably go up, once they've got their foot in the door.
But it sort of specifies a range of computer sort of processing activities that demands that you do perform certain kinds of processing on your computer and certain kinds of data storage on your own use of your own computer. But it doesn't catch people. It doesn't deny people the right to simply run their computer the way you do, which is their server the way you do, which is just to completely ignore them right from the start. That's a kind of loophole, is it?
I understood the reason it was done was actually a technical thing of if you write the data at all to a disk, it's potentially recoverable even if you erase it, whereas if you don't write it there on the first place, because there's nothing to erase, it's a more secure way of doing things. Well, that's how it's been explained to me.
It was certainly more effective, but is it, I mean, I'm not defending these laws, that they're obviously atrocious, that I mean, there's a huge burden of justification if you're going to make a law that says that we're going to infringe on your right to use your computer for its own processing the way, we say it must. But given that they do and that they can enforce it, what do they permit and what do they not?
Thinking like a lawyer for a second, and I apologise, but obviously your server knows the IP address of the client that's connected at some point, and you could make the argument that you knew it at some point. That was the knowledge, and you should have reported it. Even if it's only in RAM, if it's not written to disk. I mean, you could. It's an argument that could be made. I mean, you'd have to see how it would play out in court.
Oh, really?
My understanding of the data retention law
is probably that
it was only applied to ISPs that have got more than 50,000 subscribers. Okay, and if you're an ISP, you'll get a letter from the Secretary of State saying that the data retention laws apply to you, and you'll need to retain traffic information of the customers who are using your network. Okay. If you don't get one of these letters, because you're a small ISP. Okay, there's probably not that many small ISPs though, but your ISP won't be retaining that traffic data information.
So it doesn't apply to websites generally?
I don't think so.
So it's the big guys, it's not down at our level.
It doesn't apply to mobile network providers. It doesn't apply to them either.
And presumably the people who provide the pipe level above you would record every IP address to your server, so you not knowing IP address, it probably doesn't matter. Because the next level up probably records them anyway.
No, I don't think...
It's an open network.
I would disagree there. The state might be tapping that somewhere at some point. They might have a tap in there somewhere, but I would disagree that the ISPs would be doing that. I think it's just too much trouble for them.
It's like if the state asked them to, or there was some reason for to do it, they could easily technically do it.
But isn't that what you just said, Alan? Like, if I'm accessing some website that the police has an interest in, and the web server is recording my IP address, doesn't my ISP?
Yes.
So you're a BT customer, a Tiscali customer, a Virgin Media customer, whatever they're called, or a Sky customer, something like that. Okay, Sky will be recording that subscriber information.
This is where Tor comes in.
Yeah.
So you access it through Tor.
So does that mean that the police might find out who posted the stuff on your website because there were not so many people accessing it at that time, and they can see this guy requested it?
What I would say is that probably not, because they wouldn't be looking for they wouldn't be looking at the server side, it's at the client side, it's at the residential side. Okay, so BT residential ISP, okay, they'll be logging that information, so they can deal with those things. Okay, but the data center ISP, where the server is plugged into, they won't be logging into that. It's just too much trouble for them, and they won't be asked to do that.
I'm just aware we've only got 5-10 minutes left.
Especially if the machine is in the US somewhere, or in Malaysia, or in Australia somewhere, it's a completely different, there'll be a different person who will be looking for that.
We've done we've mentioned StatusNet, alternative to Twitter, we did Facebook. Is there an email? Was there anything else that people really wanted to find out about?
It's a great list up on the wiki
Yeah.
session.
It's a really interesting bit of software I've just it's called PageKite, and it allows you to run a web server from inside your home. Okay, so if you want to run your own DICE, for instance, but don't have to mess around with firewall rules and routers and network address translation, all these kind of boring things. Okay, you can run some software called PageKite, which allows you to. So I can run a web server on my mobile phone. Okay, and and people from anywhere in the world can connect to that, and PageKite will allow that, make that accessible. So it's just a...
I don't know, a short point on that. I mean, like, obviously there was bandwidth issues there.
Oh yeah, well it's not, obviously it's going to melt, isn't it?
Just Dave Weiner, the guy who started this living in a hamster cage, is the guy who invented all these lovely, hugely successful peer-to-peer tools. He's actually creating a microblogging network called Blork. I've not tried it yet, but if anyone wants to check that out,
You spell it?
Okay. Just to search Dave Weiner.
Actually, one question I was going to ask that was interesting with people. One thing I've been working on, this is one of those wins where just scratching my own itch, and whether anybody else ever looks at it doesn't matter, was I was just wanting to set myself up a Drupal site which aggregates all different news sites, and I'm working on the idea that I can actually sort of bring in through tag, by looking at the tags and all, sort of what different sites are saying on a particular story, just so I can go and look at easily. But I'm sure someone's already done it before, and I'm just interested. Does anybody else use some kind of news aggregation site which brings it not from the BBC and CNN, but from other interesting?
Pearl trees.
Sorry.
Pearl trees. What's called a pearl, and it's a particular subject, and then people just aggregate what they think, what article they found on the internet about this particular subject, and then create a network of pearls through which you can navigate.
Can I ask people to put their hands up if they're consuming news or creating news via aggregation?
Does Twitter count as aggregation?
Kind of, yes. Yeah. Kind of. Because
Google Reader account.
Yeah, Google Reader accounts. It's just that it seems obvious to me that aggregation is the way of creating horizontal news. As long as we do it ethnically, when you click on the link, it takes you to it doesn't take you to some meta website to capture the views, it takes you to where the news came from, and the hope that the site that created. It just seems such an obvious way to create a huge global network, but falling straight down to the grassroots. Ethical aggregation.
I know we're over time, but can I ask about something which I think is very, very relevant? Right at the start, we were talking about aggregation and how to make content discoverable. We haven't mentioned that search, open search, and the fact that that is almost by its nature centralized. So does anybody have any good distributed search technologies that they use? Or
Google.
Yeah.
Which is, it's not an open search. It's still using Google, but rather than giving Google all your data, Google is basically a proxy service. So it's a web page. You put your search in there. Your query gets sent to their proxies forward it to Google, which goes back to another one of their proxies, which then comes back to you. So it's it keeps your anonymity in stock.
What's it called again?
Google.
There's another one, IX, or what's it called? IXQ, I can't remember what it's called, but they do a similar thing. Well, you've got two options with them. Either you can use their search engine or they'll proxy to Google, but also they are the additional option of when they brought the search, you can then proxy to the page. So of course, obviously with Google, you're still linking directly to the page, but they will also proxy from the search results. And I'm trying to think what it's IX. Everybody know it? IXQ.
Well, you put it on the wiki when you're
But it's sort of an alternative to search in a way for finding things is social bookmarking. Like I was using Delicious, but then I switched. That was going to be discontinued because it was bought by Yahoo, who were going to destroy it like everything else they bought. And then some guys started an alternative called Pinboard, which seems to work really nicely. And there's just it's got a lot of links that humans have put up as saying this is an interesting link and tagged it with certain things. So if you want to find a lot of pages about a certain subject, you can go on there and just search for the tags that you're looking for, and you'll get links that people have actually put up there because they think that they're good sites for that. And I suppose there are other things as well, as like categorizing what's on the net. But some of those, which is the one can't remember now. There's the DMOS, the Open Directory project, but that seems to be floundering as well.
Just DuckDuckGo, I've heard of that.
Yeah. That's one I.
Which one?
DuckDuckGo.
DuckDuckGo.
We're probably out of time, but is anybody? I'd be interested in hearing some ideas for the next 5 years on where things are going quick.
Stumble upon. The most fantastic project I ever saw. Stumble upon. genius. And I want an centralised, true. I want an activist stumble upon. I should click this button and I get some great content.
If we're talking about activist reproduction of major, things like corporate people as well, I think Wikipedia is the kind of well, it's not the elephant in the room. It's the thing that people don't mention much. As you mentioned at the start, people don't talk about it so much in this kind of context. Like you have to have algorithmic search. That's the way to go. Find things in aggregation or something. I think there's something to be said of what they've achieved. They've achieved it so perfectly that we can't see all the sort of successes and good ideas that go in there to comprise something. It's just such a perfect solution to do what it does. I think there's a lot of good ideas in there, and what activists have kind of done is what we're doing right now, which is having a wiki for our thing, and that's good. But they don't take it off. I remember ZNet, for example, one day there suddenly appeared a little button on their front page that said Z-Wiki or something. You clicked it, it's wiki.zcommunications.org or something, and I followed it to see if anything would take off. It's a wonderful idea. It takes people to sort of build something of it, but what happens to it? And I think I waited for about 6 months and the page just repeated. Front page got repeatedly vandalised. It probably had on the order of 10 pages in the whole wiki, then it fizzled out, I guess. And I can see there's a lot of excellent activists. I mean, making wiki pages is the kind of things that activists do. I mean, activism is in large measure due to scholarship and education, and kind of refining and poring over journalism, turning it into kind of more structured understanding of what's going on. And the Wikipedia is an excellent solution to that, but their kind of NPOV is their creed. They don't take an activist slant on it. Now you can start speculating about what an activist Wikipedia would mean. Neutral point of view. And that works for making an encyclopedia into what they want to do, and I'm glad that it's there. But if activists are to sort of try to start structuring their knowledge, we're not structuring it like research does, but using human analysis, which you have to get in there. I think that's a very valuable thing, and we should be thinking about that rather than being entirely beholden to the wonders of algorithmic search for organising the world's information. I think human beings should organise the world's information, but we wrestle over the federated versus centralised issue, and Wikipedia has a huge advantage in that it is centralised, but activist efforts at wikis are they're federated to the point of being atomised, and I think we've been divided and conquered in that respect. If you start speculating about what a centralised version would look like, then you have a lot of very serious security issues of the kind that we've been considering that arise, but I think we have to start thinking about that. I think it might be a very careful, technical question about how to go about doing that, rather than something that can be resolved kind of ideologically, like we must be completely atomised, or we have to have it completely centralised.
I'm sorry, just you were saying federation there. I mean, by federation it means they can communicate. Like, if we had federated wiki thing, then it would be able to they would all be able to link up. But there isn't, because Wikipedia software isn't a federated CMS or whatever.
I know some people who were a London-based group. I'm not sure where this project went. And they did a thing where you could build it on top of Twitter, which is a platform, and you do something. You say like, Alan trusts Ben for sysadmin. Okay, so you could build these kind of things. Okay, so then if I wanted to ask a question about kind of sysadmin stuff, I'd go and say, you could find out who I trusted for sysadmin things, and you could ask that person. You say, or I trust Graham for cats. Okay, so he's the top man when it comes to like looking after cats in the world. So. And if you thought my opinions on things were any good, you could so building that kind of a kind of humanity on top of the stuff we all know and we've all got stored somewhere. That might be the thing for the next 5 years, perhaps.
Can I say there's a trivial
Can I just put a bit of information? The search engine IXQuick is the one. They claim to be the world's most private search engine. Obviously, you can read their FAQ and make decisions. It's available over HTTPS. But,
right review.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there, but IXQuick was one.
Is quick spelled norm?
Yeah, IX, just letters IX and quick.
I guess my my thing for the next 5 years is that we're going to get physical again. So there's a comment earlier about email that isn't physical. Of course it is. You're sending electricity down a physical network connected to physical devices. And when we say we're escaping the corporate net, what we mean is we're using open source software. We don't have open source computers, we don't have open source routers, we don't have an open source hardware infrastructure. Actually, kind of a lot of hardware stuff is really kicking off at the moment. Projects like the Arduino and the RepRap becoming increasingly visible. So the next 5 years for me are things like them, things like the Freedom Box, actually thinking about hardware as well, so that when we think about the means of production, we're not just talking about content and software, but we're moving into physical devices as well.
Yeah. I've read something about people built mobile phones, something in America that some people are looking into, because they're quite easy to knock up. But my injection, or question really into the next 5 years is, everything that we're talking about relies on the IP network that's been established by the US Army or whatever. Are there any alternatives that can sit on there that obfuscate the whole IP issue anyway? I mean, I know Tor is a sort of way of doing it, but at the end it beds out, it comes out, doesn't it? It tunnels out through IP, and that's, let's say,
people are working on that, so like I said, but I think we've run out of time, haven't we?
I think so, yeah, because it'd be nice.
But concrete outcomes, I am actually going to go build a bit of infrastructure to do an activist security group. I'm going to build a wiki and a bookmarking system, so you can bookmark and then write a report on any website that's going to be where it can be discussed. So I'm going to build that, and it's going to be up in 3 days, 4 days. Okay, and I'm going to link it on the page.
Can I make a suggestion?
Anyone else going to build anything?
Can I have a suggestion? What did you say there's a... I look at your site, I couldn't see where to type anything. But if it's possible, it'd be great if we can put some input into this and say what we thought was really good about what happened today, where our interest would be, and and sort of do a bit of a vote on that.
Yeah. On every session in the conference, there's a wiki underneath it, and the wiki has if you're logged in, the wiki has an edit button. It's just a wiki, so you just click the edit button, you type in wiki text, you click the edit button, it appears on the site. So just go in and edit the wiki.
You have to sign up for an account.
You have to sign up for an account. All this has been done on my account, so sign up for an account on the live site.
Right. Did you make the site?
Yes.
It's a good site. It's a good site.
It's been fantastic meeting up and having this chat. I really fucking enjoyed it.
Yeah.